Welcome to a short preview of this Screencasts Online video tutorial.
This week we'll be digging into the Shortcuts app that was released alongside iOS 12. Shortcuts will be very familiar for anyone who spent time with Workflow previously, but Shortcuts offers several advantages over its predecessor, including the ability to build your own shortcuts and trigger them via Siri. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to get up and running with Shortcuts on your iOS device, and give you examples of some of the powerful things that you can do with the app. We'll show you a couple different ways you can get shortcuts into your shortcuts library, show you how to build them from scratch, explain some key principles you need to understand when creating your own shortcuts, and show you how to share them with the world once you've got them done. Let's get started. To get started with shortcuts, you first need to install the app from the iOS App Store. Shortcuts is only available for iOS 12. So if you have iOS 11 or earlier, you're going to need to upgrade to iOS 12 before you can download it. Shortcuts replaces the Workflow app that existed previously. So if you have Workflow installed on your iOS device and you upgrade to iOS 12, the Workflow app will become the Shortcuts app. Assuming you don't have it installed yet, you'll need to download it from the iOS App Store. Open the App Store app on your iOS device, and then locate the Shortcuts app by a simple search. Here's the app right here. Tap on the app icon and you'll see more details, including the screenshots. Tap the icon in the header and the app will download in the background. We get this nice progress bar, which shows us how close it is to being installed. And once it's done, we can tap Open to open the app on our iOS device. The first time you open Shortcuts, you'll see a splash screen, which is going to show you some of the advantages of using the Shortcuts app, but we're going to cover these in this tutorial, so we'll just tap the Get Started button. And if you have any shortcuts that you created on a different iOS device or any workflows left over from a previous installation of the Workflow app, those will show up automatically in your library. I've got a couple associated with my iCloud account that have imported automatically. But in this tutorial, we're going to show you the different ways that you can get shortcuts into your Shortcuts app and even create them from scratch.
That's just a quick preview of one of this week's Apple-related tutorials from Screencasts Online. Screencasts Online is your premium source of Apple-related video tutorials. All of our members get access to brand new, up-to-date tutorials each week, as well as unlimited access to our entire video archive full of Mac and iOS related tutorials. You can stream and download all of our videos on your Mac, iPad and iPhone, and even your Apple TV using the members-only Screencasts Online Apple TV app. Membership also includes a complimentary subscription to the digital Screencasts Online monthly magazine, published each month and packed with videos, articles, reviews, as well as hints and tips covering all aspects of the Mac, iPad, iPhone, and all of the other fantastic Apple products. So, if you're ready to start getting the most out of your Apple devices, visit screencastsonline.com today and become a Screencasts Online member.